Imagine this. You're standing alone in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, the world's most dazzling palace, yet your hands are clammy and your mouth tastes of copper. Midnight has just rung, vibrating through crystal chandeliers. Every gilded surface catches the light and throws it back as 100 distorted reflections of your pale face. Marble floors press cold against the soles of your shoes, and behind you, the endless procession of mirrors seems to watch your every move. Your heart pounds beneath layers of silk, for in your pocket you clutch a velvet-sealed letter, one that could lift you into the Sun King's favor or ruin you forever. As you break the wax, you feel the eyes of the entire court behind every curtain, waiting to judge, waiting to destroy. Tonight, your fate will be decided not by rank or loyalty, but by secrets you never dared to confess. And as you open the letter, a single thought seizes you. At Versailles, your most private weakness is someone else's opportunity. You think you know how power worked in the age of Louis XIV. You've heard the stories. Ballrooms overflowing with perfume, swirling silks, and noblemen exchanging clever insults over glasses of wine. You imagine candlelit dances, polite intrigue, and dignified flirtation. But you're wrong. Versailles is a fortress of appetites, a palace whose beauty conceals a labyrinth of dangers that can swallow even the highest born in a single night. The rules here are written in whispers, and one false step, a glance too long, a rumor too persistent, means disgrace or exile. It's not enough to be loyal. Here, you must survive the game of secrets, where sexual desire is both currency and weapon. Behind every door, alliances are sealed or shattered by midnight bargains. The prettiest courtiers and the most pious priests are equally at risk. Everything you thought was scandal in royal history is only the surface. What you're about to witness makes modern celebrity gossip seem like child's play. You're not a passive observer. You're trapped in this glittering cage. The year is 1682. Louis XIV, the Sun King, has forced the nobility to abandon their ancestral lands and move to Versailles, where he can watch them, control them, shape their every pleasure and pain. You wake each morning to the sound of trumpets, to the ritual of the royal lever, the king's rising, where hundreds of eyes assess every gesture and every word you utter. The court's daily ceremonies are carefully choreographed, but beneath the elegance, something festers. Every conversation is dangerous. Every smile might be a snare. Power is distributed in subtle glances, invitations to masked balls, in the secret notes passed from hand to trembling hand. Historical records, letters by Madame de Maintenon, memoirs of the Duc de Saint-Simon, secret police files preserved in the Bastille's archives show the machinery behind the spectacle. The Cabinet Noir, where personal correspondence is intercepted and read. The Lettre de Cachet, a single stroke of the king's quill that can banish you from the world with no appeal. Here, a mere accusation of illicit desire, truthful or not, can cost you your name, your fortune, or your life. At Versailles, sexuality is a force no one can ignore. It is used to seal alliances, to destroy rivals, and to maintain the Sun King's supremacy over every beating heart within his walls. Every noble family has its spies, every bedroom its hidden listeners. The Marquise de Montespan, the king's notorious mistress, rose to power not only by seduction, but by cultivating a network of informers, bribing servants, and arranging encounters that would later be used as blackmail. Saint Simon records entire families ruined by rumors of inappropriate attachments. One chambermaid's mistake, one overheard confession, could become a weapon in the hands of the king's favorites. This isn't the Versailles of fairy tales. It's a court where even your dreams are vulnerable, your every intimate thought a possible crime. But here's where the nightmare truly begins. Imagine the tension at dusk, when the palace's 3,000 candles are lit and a new round of invitations appears, seemingly at random, summoning select courtiers to private chambers or masked gatherings. The moment your name is whispered, you know you are being tested. Accept, and you risk entrapment by rivals who will watch your every gesture. Refuse, and you signal guilt or defiance. You move through endless corridors, past portraits of stone-faced ancestors, feeling the floor tilt beneath your feet with every step. Every detail is scrutinized. The blush on your cheek, the tremor in your voice. You see friends disappear from the court overnight, their names erased, their rooms cleared by dawn. When you pass the king's guards, you wonder if they're watching for treason or simply waiting for the next victim of scandal. You breathe the perfume-heavy air, hoping to drown your fear, but even that betrays you too much, and you're branded as trying to hide the scent of another's embrace. You realize, with sudden horror, that at Versailles, privacy itself is an illusion. The palace is a stage, and you are always on display. Your beauty, your obedience, your desire, your shame. The stakes are impossibly high. If you become entangled in the Sun King's web, your family's honor, your future, and your very life hang in the balance. One wrong word can lead to exile in a distant monastery. A misunderstood glance can end with you locked away, never to return. Even the Queen herself is not immune. The records of the Cabinet Noir document the daily surveillance of the royal bedchamber, the tracking of lovers, the anonymous denunciations sent directly to Louis XIV's ministers. And yet, the games continue. The palace's outward splendor is maintained at all costs, but the price is paid in secrets, betrayals, and the constant fear that the next story whispered in the dark will be about you. But what happens when your most private secrets become the only currency left in the game? As you move deeper into Versailles, one truth becomes clear. Beneath the golden mirrors lies a world and where nothing is sacred, and only those who master the art of survival can hope to remain standing. The Sun King may rule France, but here, in the Palace of Shadows, it is desire twisted, weaponized, and terrifying that truly reigns. You find yourself summoned, not by trumpet or herald, but by the whisper of your own name carried on the lips of a masked servant. The invitation arrives in the guise of a folded scrap of parchment, slipped beneath your door while the palace still sleeps. Your heart thuds as you read the ornate script. Tonight, you are requested at a petite nuit. You have heard rumors about these gatherings. Some say they are nothing but harmless amusement. But you have seen the faces of those who return, eyes hollow, smiles forced, their futures suddenly brighter or irreparably ruined. Every muscle tenses as you realize what is at stake. Refuse the summons, and your absence will be noticed. Accept, and you step into a room where every glance is a negotiation, every touch a test. In Versailles, pleasure is never just pleasure. It is always a transaction. Tonight, Your loyalty, your body, and your silence are all for sale. As you slip through the candlelit corridors, you sense invisible hands shaping your destiny. Servants brush past, eyes averted, but ears keenly attuned. The walls themselves seem to listen. You enter the salon, heavy curtains drawn tight, the scent of orange blossom and musk thick in the air. Louis XIV's inner circle sits around a table cluttered with wine glasses, cards, and delicate pipes. You realize with a shock that here, in this private world, rank means little. Your value is measured by what you are willing to confess, by the secrets you can offer, and by the limits you are prepared to cross. At the king's court, information is currency more valuable than gold. The hosts smile too broadly, their questions probing. Who have you seen in the Queen's chamber after midnight? What letters have you intercepted? What debts, what vices, what forbidden desires haunt your rivals? You feel the pressure mounting with every breath. But here's where the game turns cruel. You watch as the king's agents, men like Bontemps, the chief valet, or Louvois, the minister of war, produce lists. They recite the hidden weaknesses of every noble family: a secret lover, an illegitimate child, a gambling debt, a penchant for masked encounters in the gardens after dusk. Some in the room laugh it off, others blanch with fear. You understand instantly, these secrets aren't merely gossip, they are leverage. Louis XIV's court keeps order not with swords, but with whispers. A single rumor, fed to the right person, can trigger a duel or exile an entire household. You witness the subtle terror as a young duke's hand is placed atop a lady's wrist. Too intimately, too publicly. Eyes lock, fans flutter, and you sense the ripple of danger. In that moment, you understand that every pleasure here is paid for with the risk of destruction. Soon, it's your turn to be inspected. You're ushered from the salon to a private chamber, your pulse racing beneath brocade. A circle of courtiers awaits, their faces half hidden by elaborate masks. This is the ritual of humiliation that Versailles excels at, a living tableau where every detail will be remembered, whispered, weaponized. You stand, half-dressed, under the scrutiny of Madame de Montespan herself. She appraises you for suitability, and the pretense of dignity vanishes. Saint-Simon would later write that in these moments, the palace's walls absorbed more confessions than any cathedral. Here, in the flickering candlelight, your body is no longer your own. It is public property, a canvas for the ambitions of others. You remember the stories of lettres de cachet, those terrifying warrants signed by the king, used to banish or imprison anyone whose desires threatened the royal image. The threat hangs in the air. A single misstep, and you could disappear by sunrise, erased from the records as though you never existed. But it gets worse. The games do not end in the bedroom. The king's network of spies, servants, priests, even children, patrol the corridors, listening for betrayal. Every morning brings news of someone departed for the country or called away for a special task. Sometimes you hear stories of those who vanished for good, men locked in distant prisons, women consigned to convents, all for sins that were whispered before they were proven. You see how the court manipulates not only bodies, but bloodlines. Marriages are arranged or destroyed overnight. Fortunes reversed on a rumor. Documents from the infamous Cabinet Noir record the fate of a nobleman whose private love letters were intercepted, exposing an affair with a married courtier. By dawn, his wife had been granted a royal annulment, and he was sent to the Bastille. Even those closest to the Sun King, his own mistresses and sons, live in terror of exposure. No one is immune. A forward hook. But you haven't yet glimpsed the sharpest edge of this world. Even if you master every rule, even if you survive tonight, the price of your silence is a debt you will never fully repay. In Versailles, the currency of secrets is never spent. It only multiplies. The night drags on, the air in the chamber growing heavy with the stench of sweat and anticipation. You are handed a mask, the delicate silk trembling in your grasp. The next game begins, a masquerade in which roles shift with every dance. Alliances formed and shattered before sunrise. Beneath the music and laughter, you sense the court's attention sharpening. You see the eyes of enemies and friends alike searching for one misstep, one falter, one telltale sign of guilt. When the king himself appears, his gaze sweeping the room, you feel the full weight of history pressing down upon you. Every movement, every word, every glance will be remembered and perhaps someday used against you. Your fear is not irrational. Records from the Cabinet Noir show how carefully every scandal was catalogued, how even the faintest rumor could destroy a dynasty. And here, precisely here, in the hush that follows a sudden silence, with masked faces turned toward you, with the court's appetite for blood and shame barely concealed beneath painted smiles, comes the revelation that will haunt you forever. This is no longer a game. This is the machinery of power itself. You understand that at Versailles, the difference between a guest and a prisoner is as thin as a whisper. One moment you are dancing in the king's favor, the next you are vanishing into the night, condemned by secrets you never even knew you revealed. If you're starting to see how power and desire intertwine at Versailles and want to uncover more of the secrets history tried to bury, hit subscribe now. You'll never look at royal history the same way again. And as the masquerade continues, remember, survival here is never guaranteed, and the next invitation could be your last. You think you've learned the rules, that your careful silences and calculated smiles are enough to protect you. But at Versailles, there's always another layer beneath the surface, another test of loyalty, another bargain forced in the dark. Soon, your survival depends not only on what you conceal, but on what you're willing to betray. You are summoned by an official of the Police des Mœurs, the court's shadowy morality police. He greets you by name, his gloved hand lingering a fraction too long on your shoulder, and hands you a small blank book. The message is clear. Everyone is watching everyone else. You're expected to fill these pages with names, rumors, and confessions. The king's network is a living organism, and now you are part of its nervous system. Spy or be spied upon. The days blur together, each sunrise bringing new terrors. At every meal, every ball, you must listen for what is unsaid, watching the faces around you for a flicker of panic or a flash of triumph. You become adept at deciphering the code of fans and glances, learning that a cough, a dropped handkerchief, or an untied ribbon can spell disaster. If you refuse to provide useful information, you risk suspicion. And in a world where innocence is no defense, suspicion is a death sentence. Historical records from the Paris police archives detail how courtiers were quietly interrogated about their friends and families. forced to sign statements implicating others in scandalous behavior. One signature, a single careless word, could end a life. But here's where it gets worse. The more you try to shield yourself, the more tangled you become in the palace's web. You are pressured to spy on your own friends. In private, trembling voices confess to you, hoping you will protect their secrets. Instead, you find yourself passing notes to the Cabinet Noir, watching as they are logged in a vast ledger of shame. You see how hush money flows through the corridors, bribes paid not just to keep scandals quiet, but to manufacture them. Madame de Maintenon's correspondence reveals how entire households rose or fell on a single piece of intercepted gossip. You learn the story of the Duchesse de la Vallière, whose fall began with a rumor of forbidden love and ended in her banishment to a convent. Her letters, preserved in the National Archives, describe a world where one's virtue could be destroyed by envy alone. Soon, you witness the full force of institutional horror. You are present as a secret tribunal is called a chambre ardente, the burning chamber, assembled not for justice, but for spectacle. Its purpose to investigate whispered allegations of sexual magic and illicit rituals, the kind that can never be proven and yet always leave a stain. La Voisin, infamous for the poison affair, is called to testify. You sit in the shadows, listening, as nobles are accused of attending black masses in candlelit cellars, of drinking potions meant to ensnare the king's heart, of performing acts so unspeakable that the very air in the chamber seems to curdle. Witnesses are paraded through, some bribed, some tortured. Every confession is added to the king's arsenal. The Chambre Ardente's records, preserved in fragments, reveal how evidence was often fabricated and how confessions extracted under torture led to the deaths or disappearances of dozens of courtiers. A forward hook. But if you think you're safe in the crowd, remember this. No one is ever truly invisible at Versailles. Even a servant's whispered tale can ignite a fire that consumes an entire lineage. Now the true machinery of control reveals itself. The king's ministers weaponize sexuality against both men and women. You see a young marquis, once favored at court, accused of sodomitical practices, the charge enough to erase his name, his fortune, his future. You hear of noble women sent away for suspected irregular affections, their reputations destroyed not by proof, but by jealousy. The queen herself is not immune. Maria Theresa's Spanish retinue is watched relentlessly for rumors of infidelity, every smile and sigh recorded in the black books of the court police. You recall the letter of a foreign ambassador, shocked to learn that Versailles kept ledgers cataloging the bedroom crimes of its most prominent families. Names, dates, alleged offenses, all filed away for use as leverage or punishment. The court's obsession with policing female sexuality reaches a fever pitch. You see it used to settle vendettas, to eliminate rivals. Accusations of secret pregnancies, of sapphic liaisons among the queen's ladies, are traded like daggers. One evening, you hear the muffled sobs of a laundress dragged before the chief physician, forced to undergo a humiliating examination. Her fate sealed by a rumor, her life discarded to preserve another's place in the king's favor. The story of the Affaire des Poisons unfolds in front of your eyes. Women tortured into confession, men executed on hearsay, all under the guise of cleansing the court. But there's another layer, even more chilling. The sexual surveillance is so systematic, so normalized that you find yourself forgetting what it felt like to be safe. Survival means anticipating the next scandal before it finds you. At night, as you walk the gardens alone, you flinch at every footstep behind you. Your dreams are haunted by the threat of exposure, of waking to find your name on a summons, your bed ransacked, your most private moments read aloud before a tribunal. You remember the words of Saint-Simon, "At Versailles, there are no secrets, only debts waiting to be collected." A forward hook, and just when you think you've paid the price for silence, you realize the cost has only begun to mount. There is one chamber in Versailles where the darkest rituals are reserved for those whose loyalty is most in question. Here, at the heart of power, you see the final, unspoken rule. Even your innocence is a liability. To be above suspicion is to be envied. To be envied is to be targeted. And to be targeted is to become the next offering in the king's endless pursuit of control. You sense it with every word left unsaid, every shadow lingering just out of sight. The machinery of sexual surveillance turns relentless and cold, and you are trapped inside, one secret among thousands, each waiting to be revealed. You are summoned again, this time not to a masked gathering or a dimly lit salon, but to the deepest corridors of Versailles, where only the most trusted and the most endangered are called. The invitation is silent, the command delivered in the quiet insistence of a royal guard who finds you at dawn, just as the fog clings to the marble statues in the gardens. You follow him past locked doors and silent sentinels, deeper into the palace's guts, until you reach a room so still it could be a tomb. Here, fear is a living thing, thick enough to taste. You are not alone. Another courtier waits with you, pale as milk and barely able to meet your eyes. Someone, somewhere, has decided your loyalty must be tested, not just by words, but by humiliation and pain. A physician stands ready, flanked by clerks. You know what is coming, the infamous examinations, described in court records, a ritual as old as the king's reign. Under the pretext of protecting the throne from scandal, both women and men are stripped, probed, measured. It is said the queen herself was subjected to this indignity after whispers circulated of a lover among her Spanish attendants. One wrong answer, a bruise in the wrong place, a trembling hand, and your life can unravel by noon. Madame de Maintenon's letters, written in careful script, detail these medical investigations with the icy detachment of a woman who learned to weaponize shame. "We must cleanse the palace," she wrote, "lest it fall to rot from within." You feel her eyes upon you, even from centuries away, and understand that here the body is both evidence and accusation. But here's where the ordeal darkens. When the examination ends, you are taken not to your own chamber, but to a hidden salon, its windows shuttered, its air dense with smoke and the scent of wax. A tribunal sits at a table, its members masked and expressionless. You are given a quill and forced to sign a declaration that you have never conspired against the king, that your heart and your body belong only to the crown. The other courtier, shaking and silent, cannot bring herself to swear. You see her led away, her sobs echoing down the empty hallway. In the records of the Chambre Ardente, there are hundreds of names like hers, lives broken by rumor, erased by royal will. But the machinery does not stop at confession. You witness the aftermath, the silent removals, the rooms cleared before dawn, the personal effects burned or sold off at secret auctions. You catch a glimpse of a familiar coat in the hands of a footman, a necklace you once admired slipping into the pocket of a royal official. The Duke of Saint-Simon's memoirs describe these vanishings. One might dine with a friend and find him gone by morning, his name unspoken henceforth. His story, a warning for the rest. Even suicides are rebranded as honorable departures. The palace is a self-cleaning organism, and you feel the threat settle into your bones. Each disappearance is a reminder. Your survival is always contingent, your every gesture a possible last. You try to escape into the palace gardens, seeking a moment's peace. But Versailles has no sanctuary. The groves and fountains conceal their own horrors. You overhear two laundresses whispering about a maid who fell pregnant by the wrong man and was sent away in disgrace, never to be seen again. In another corner, you catch a snatch of foreign language, a warning from an ambassador to his protégé, urging him to keep his desires hidden if he wants to see his homeland again. The paranoia is so thick, you could drown in it. The very air is charged with the knowledge that pleasure is always suspect, that beauty and desire must be policed and punished. And just as you begin to imagine that discretion will save you, you are called to another secret gathering. This one attended not by courtiers, but by those whose power derives from their knowledge of secrets. Here, confessions are traded for protection. A minor official offers you a way out. He has seen the lists, he says, and he knows who will be named next. In exchange for your silence about his own indiscretions, he will see that your name disappears from the king's ledgers. You hesitate, knowing that every bargain at Versailles is double-edged. But to refuse is to accept your own destruction. You realize that in this world, to survive is to become complicit, to barter with your own shame. As the sun sets and the palace glows gold outside, you sign the final document, your freedom bought with the currency of another's ruin. But here's the cruelest twist. In the stillness after the deal is struck, you sense that nothing has truly changed. The eyes that watched you before will keep watching. The ledgers will fill with new names. The tribunal will sit in judgment again. You've bought a reprieve, not a pardon, and the price will come due with the next rumor, the next indiscretion, the next shift in the Sun King's fickle favor. A forward hook. Yet Versailles is not finished with you. Beyond these gilded halls lies the ultimate ritual, the spectacle that binds the court together in a cycle of humiliation and spectacle, a ceremony in which no one is ever truly innocent, and no one ever escapes unchanged. And as you return to your own chambers, you cannot escape the final realization. The palace itself is designed not to house the powerful, but to break them. The true architecture of Versailles is built from fear, enforced with secrets, and lit not by sunlight, but by the flickering candle of your own dread. You're summoned to the grand salon at dusk, the sky outside blazing with the colors of sunset, every window of Versailles reflecting crimson and gold. But inside, the air is heavy and the faces around you are masks, painted, powdered, each smile a thin veneer over panic. Tonight is the ritual everyone dreads and secretly craves. The spectacle where the court's obsession with surveillance and humiliation is laid bare for all to see. This is the betting ceremony. An event so elaborate, so saturated in voyeurism and performance, that even the bravest hearts skip a beat as the trumpets sound. You watch as a newlywed noble couple, little more than children, are paraded through the galleries, a crowd of relatives and strangers jostling for the best view. They are stripped by their own families, garments peeled away with practiced hands and raucous jokes. The bride's skin shivers in the candlelight, her humiliation made a public currency, her dignity bartered for the king's blessing. You remember the records from foreign ambassadors? Lord Portland's reports detail his shock at these public unveilings, calling them a ceremony of exquisite cruelty, masked as tradition. There is no room for protest. Even the Queen endured this spectacle, her private union scrutinized as a matter of state. But here's where the ritual deepens into horror. Once the couple is in bed, the curtains are drawn aside. The highest-ranking courtiers crowd close, some whispering advice, others stifling laughter. The priest blesses the bed, then stands aside as a royal official hands the groom a silk sash, proof that the act has been accomplished. In some cases, witnesses linger in the chamber, ears straining for the sounds of consummation, ready to parade blood-stained sheets through the corridors at dawn. The pressure is inescapable. Should the couple fail, the consequences are swift and merciless: annulment, disgrace, or exile. The court's appetite for humiliation knows no bounds. The memoirs of Saint-Simon recall a bride who fainted from terror, revived only to be interrogated by 3 physicians, her innocence doubted until the king himself declared her suitable. You realize, standing in the shadows, that these spectacles are not merely about enforcing royal legitimacy. They are acts of control, rituals that transform private intimacy into public theater. The courtiers gather not to celebrate, but to bear witness, to judge, to gossip. Each participant is both victim and accomplice, ensnared in a system that feeds on spectacle. Even the musicians and servants are drawn into the ritual, their silence purchased with coins and threats. The architect Mansart designed secret corridors behind the walls, passageways for the king and his agents to observe without being seen. In Versailles, there is always someone listening, always someone watching. But here's the truth that chills you to the bone. After the bedding ceremony comes the masquerade, a night of wild dancing where every guest is required to wear a mask, ostensibly for celebration, but in reality, to license behavior that would be unthinkable in daylight. The ball becomes a marketplace of bodies, a masquerade of seduction and threat. You watch as alliances shift with every dance, as the king's favorites are plucked from the crowd for private audiences, as jealous rivals slip away to plot their revenge. Madame de Montespan's letters describe the freedom of these nights, but warn that every touch is observed, every word remembered. You see men and women disappear into darkened alcoves, only to return pale and silent, their futures hanging on the whims of those who witnessed, or claim to have witnessed, their transgressions. At dawn, as the masks are removed, you are left with a sense of vertigo. Nothing is what it seems. Reputations are made and ruined in an instant, and the stories told about last night's festivities will become weapons in the hands of the ambitious. You remember the accounts of English envoys, stunned by the unnatural openness of the Sun King's court, the way bodies are put on display and then punished for being seen. Versailles is a hall of mirrors, every reflection distorted, every secret exposed, every pleasure doubled back as threat. But you have not yet glimpsed the final secret, the one almost erased from the royal chronicles. At the heart of this machinery is a ceremony known only to the king's innermost circle. Here, in the deepest room, stripped of titles and masks, courtiers are compelled to confess their greatest desires, their deepest shames, while the king himself listens and decides their fate. It is a rite both spiritual and profane, a last trial of loyalty where survival means offering up everything that makes you vulnerable. Some are broken by the ordeal. A few emerge transformed, but none escape unchanged. A forward hook. But there is one last revelation, one more step in the spiral. What happens in Versailles when even the king's own appetite for humiliation and power reaches its breaking point? You are about to see the moment when the palace itself turns from spectacle to nightmare, and the price of survival is paid in something far darker than shame. You stand at the threshold of Versailles' innermost sanctum, summoned to the chamber where the rules of the palace, already twisted, are finally stripped away. Here, where the golden light can't reach, where velvet drapes swallow every sound, you feel the weight of history close in. The king himself sits at the center of the room, not as a distant monarch, but as the master of a ritual designed to dissolve all boundaries between power and submission. Around him, the highest lords and ladies kneel, no longer noble, no longer even themselves, but supplicants in a rite of absolute control. The silence is unbearable. Your mouth dries. Your hands shake as you realize that everything you have endured, every humiliation, every surveillance, every secret traded, has brought you to this moment. The king commands a confession, not the confessions demanded by priests, nor the lies whispered to save your name at court. Here you must speak the one thing you have always hidden, the desire or shame that has shaped your every movement. You look into the Sun King's eyes and see not mercy, but a cold curiosity, a hunger to know what makes you tremble. Around you, others break down. One baron confesses to a forbidden love. A marquise reveals a lifetime of betrayals. Another courtier sobs out a secret so raw that even the king flinches. This is the climax, the core of Versailles' terror. Your most private pain is no longer your own. It is transformed into royal entertainment, a spectacle for the court's consumption. Historical records of Louis XIV's Cabinet Noir describe these gatherings. The ledgers, the files, the careful cataloging of every weakness for future use. Nothing is wasted. Even as you speak, you know that your confession will haunt you, leveraged to ensure obedience for years to come. Madame de Maintenon's secret correspondence speaks of courtiers broken not by exile or poverty, but by the knowledge that the king held their souls in his hands. But here's where the horror takes its final, most twisted shape. The king does not need to punish you. The humiliation is its own sentence. As you stagger out of the chamber, past the golden glass that once seemed so alluring, you realize that every person you pass is a survivor of the same ritual. Versailles is a society of the broken, bound not by loyalty or faith, but by the shared terror of exposure. The system is self-sustaining. No one needs to enforce the rules, because the fear of the next confession is enough to keep everyone in line. And now, in the stunned hush that follows, you glimpse the broader truth. Versailles was not simply a palace, nor even a court. It was a crucible, forging generations of Europe's most powerful families in the fires of psychological domination. The rituals perfected here, the surveillance, the public shaming, the transformation of intimacy into weapon, would spread throughout the continent. The machinery built by Louis XIV did not die with him. It became the blueprint for modern scandal, for the political blackmail and celebrity destruction that still haunt the corridors of power. You walk from the palace into the gray dawn, the scent of candle wax and fear still clinging to your skin. You understand now that the Sun King's greatest legacy is not the mirrors or the gardens or the endless line of heirs. It is the invention of control through desire, the weaponization of shame, the knowledge that even the purest love or the most private thought can be turned against you. Versailles endures wherever secrets are stockpiled, wherever a single confession can destroy a dynasty. This is the final reflection. You entered Versailles dazzled by its splendor, certain that its beauty was a promise of safety. Now you see the truth. Beneath the gilded ceilings, behind every mask, every pleasure, every ceremony, there is only the endless struggle to survive the Sun King's shadow. If witnessing the true face of Versailles has changed the way you see power, secrets, and the legacy of royalty, subscribe now. You'll continue to uncover the buried truths behind history's most celebrated empires and see the patterns that textbooks tried to hide. This journey has only just begun.